This is a special week for me here on the podcast. Super excited for this one. It's kind of coming full circle for me. I started this show 6 years ago, and during the beginning of this podcast, I thought of the possibilities of certain guests that I could get on the show and what could happen later on. But I'll be honest, when I started the show, I never knew if that was actually going to be a reality. Like, how often do people start podcasts, build a platform to where it's at, to a large enough platform to be able to get certain guests on the show where they have a certain amount of credit where these guests will be willing to join them. Well, today I have the opportunity to speak to a childhood favorite player. He is the reason I am a fan of the Ohio State University. He was the main guy that I cheered for, and he won the Heisman Trophy at Ohio State. He went on to have an amazing NFL career as a running back, and now he is a college football head coach, and he's had quite the career, and he's going to be sharing so much knowledge with us. It's arguably one of the most special interviews I've had on this show, and I'm grateful to be able to share with you here on my platform. So get ready. This is the Game Guru. So, what's up, everybody? Welcome out to another episode of the Gametime Guru Podcast. I am your host, Shane Larson. Excited to be here with you guys for yet another interview, another week on the show. Another awesome story we're going to get to hear. And this is our take 2 of this podcast. It's kind of interesting how it all works. And you guys can follow me on social media. I'll tell you guys a little bit more about what went down. But grateful to have our guests on the show. And I'm grateful to be where we're at on the show. 6 years running. I tell you guys all the time, I just appreciate all the listeners who have tuned in. This is why we're in 180 countries. We've gone worldwide. Everybody's sharing the podcast over the last 6 years. All the guests have joined us and everything in between. So, with that being said, I want to introduce our guest. As you guys heard introduction, this is a very, very special one for me. My favorite player growing up. He's the reason I'm a Buckeyes fan. I've talked about it before. Those who know me personally know this, but for those who are maybe new to the show or maybe don't know so much about my fandom of Ohio State, you wouldn't know this. But he is the reason I am a fan of the school ever since I was 7 years old. So I'm going to introduce our guest. He's a head coach. Right now, he's a former Heisman Trophy winner, former NFL running back. He's got all the accolades. His name is Eddie, and he's joining the podcast. I'm excited to have you here with us, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Shane. I know we've been working really hard at trying to make this happen. Here is take 2 for it, man. I appreciate your work. Thanks for reaching out. I saw your deal on Instagram where you talked about the moment you became an Ohio State fan, and I was flattered. I said, hey, man, let me reach out and see if we can get something done for you, man. So thanks for being a fan of me and what I've been able to do throughout my career.
Yeah, man, it's wild that I'm even chatting with you, man. And it's cool what you're referring to for those listeners who are paying attention right now. I made a social media post. What I do on social media, I try to answer questions that people have had for me. And I've had quite a few people say, why? Because I run an Ohio State football channel on YouTube with my business partners.
Mm-hmm.
And people have asked me, why do you call yourself the Boise Buckeye? Why are you were you born in Ohio? So I answer questions on social media. And for those listeners out there, I did it. I was answering them why do you like Ohio State if you're not from there? Nobody in your family cares about them. And I had to explain it. Yeah. And then that same night I get a DM and I thought it was a joke. My wife is sitting there. I'm 34 years old and fanboying complete over my wife. I go, no way. She goes, what? I'm like, dude, this is Amelia Eddie George hit me back up. No, it's not. No, I'm looking at the account. I'm like, dude, no, I follow the guy. This is him. And so it's just one of those moments where I was like, dude, he actually got back to me. I'm just grateful we could make it happen and get to know a little bit more of your story, man. So obviously the fandom began when you were at Ohio State for me. That's when I kind of learned who you were. And then I followed you all throughout the rest of your NFL career and everything. Plus I'm a Cowboys fan too. So I got a little bit of that as well in your NFL career, but just a little bit, but I followed you all the way through. But I want to rewind the clock and get to know you before the days of Ohio, before the Heisman Trophy run. I want to get to know you more as you were growing up and the sports that you competed in. So would you mind kind of breaking down when you picked up a football, and were you a multi-sport athlete or did you kind of focus on football from a young age?
Well, since I can remember, I always played football. I always had a football in my hand. Growing up in Philadelphia with my mother and my father, my father was a big sports fan. He loved football. loved running backs, and that's where I got my love of wanting to be a running back. And I've always watched and admired all the great backs from his time, from Walter Payton to Franco Harris, O.J. Simpson, Billy Sims, Joe Cribbs, just to name a few, Marcus Allen. And I've always loved the game of football. Growing up, I dabbled in basketball, but didn't have a great jump shot. Couldn't go left. Wrestled a little bit, but I ran track. So track and football were my main things. So I ran the high hurdles and the intermediate 300 hurdles as well. And I went to Fort King Military Academy. But football was the end all be all. I really wasn't interested in any other sport other than football. It was going to help me be the best football player I could be. Then I was all for it. But outside of that, I didn't have any aspirations of playing baseball or golf or swim. None of that. It was just running the rock. That was it.
No, that's super interesting, man. It's funny because I just interviewed Ricky Williams on the show a couple of weeks back, and he was talking about his baseball experience. So that's why I asked that question. Like, we knew Ricky and we know you as a running back, right? But Ricky is a running back, but he actually was, went down the professional ball route for a short time too. Like, it's just interesting to see, like, if people, if they train. But you mentioned track, and I kind of want to unbox that real quick. Track. How did that correlate? Because I coach young athletes that are, in senior years. I coach club basketball. We travel around the country and whatnot. And I try to talk to them about, like, if you're playing another sport, and I try to ask them, like, how does that correlate? Like, how can you implement what you're learning there into the sport that you really love? So for you, I guess I'd ask the same question. Did you notice anything specific besides just like cardiovascular conditioning that you could implement from track onto the football field?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's all about speed, and I was never blessed with natural speed. I had to work on my speed to get faster, and running track was a great way to do that. Running 400s, 200s, the hurdles, especially the hurdles for leg strength and stretching out your stride and power. You need to be able to 3-step in between each hurdle, and that's how I built my speed up, along with weight training and so forth. So I would recommend any athlete that's playing football, you need to run track, because if you don't love to run, then you can't play the game of football. And it translates over because you're able to stay in your runs longer. It's speed endurance. So you're training your hamstrings, calves, your glutes to be able to stay in a run longer, and have that endurance to run at a high level or a faster level for a longer period of time. And I would find that I would have a key differentiator within that for myself when I got late in the fourth quarter. My conditioning levels were pretty high, and I would always make sure that I was the best conditioned athlete, or try to be one of the top athletes that was the best in conditioning when I got into the fourth quarter. So whenever the other guys got tired, I wouldn't necessarily get stronger. I would just maintain longer. So that's what I've noticed, with all the track workouts and the speed and the cut, the agilities, all that helps. And the power, the plyometric work, everything helps. So I tell my youngest son that you have to be able to run. I don't care if you're 260 pounds. I want you to run track so you can learn how to run, how to burst, how to get in and out of your cuts, how to fire your muscles and to maintain that. So, that's the long and gist of it.
No, I love that. That's super good information. I hope those, like, I forgot to mention earlier, but if you're listening to this podcast and you might be new to it or you're not, you know the drill. I always tell people, take out your notes. Like, if you're listening to it on your phone, cool. Make sure you have your notepad out. You can always pause the podcast, rewind it, whatever. Take some notes. This is the whole point of the show, is to, like, learn from the guys. So I would encourage, especially if you're a football player, you're talking to one of the best to do it right here. So you're to do it right here. So I want to consider maybe implementing the feedback. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No, I was gonna say, Shane, you're right. I mean, anytime that you can, pick up any nugget information on the podcast, that's what I do all day. I get different podcasts. I listen to different leadership podcasts, different coaches, different master classes, just to pick up one thing that I've never heard or I can learn. You always evolve, you're always growing. So I'm so refreshed to hear you say, hey, if you're in your car or if you're on a bus ride or on a plane, you've downloaded this podcast, pick up a pen, write it down, because you never know what nuggets you can get on it.
110%. See, he gets it. Everybody else needs to get it too.
That's right.
I love that. So, Eddie, as you made the transition from the high school to the collegiate realm, this is a question I wanted to know from you, because I only knew you during I was first introduced to your style of football when you were on your Heisman run, but I want to know that transition from high school to college. A lot of kids don't expect they might be a great athlete, but they don't really know what's coming. They don't understand what's coming in the college world, such as academics. You got to pay attention to classes. You got to abide by. You got to have more, I guess, self-discipline, if you will.
Oh yeah.
I want to know more about that transition to the college game, and not just the college game, but the college world, from high school to college. What was the toughest transition for you? And I guess if you could give a piece of advice to somebody, what would it be?
For me, it really wasn't as tough as for others, because I was already away from home by the age of 15. I went to a military academy in Virginia for 2.5 years. And that prepared me to go to college. It prepared me to go to class and to be on time, because everything was structured. And I saw the value in that, and I saw the benefits behind having that structure and having great study habits for the tail end of my high school career. So when I got to college, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. It wasn't, I'm going to be homesick and, am I going to get caught up with girls and all of that? I felt I had time for it, but my number one priority was to play ball. And the most challenging part to it was having the freedom not to go to class and not be held accountable for that. But you understand quickly that catches up with you your freshman year. So you got to have the discipline to understand that you have free time. You're responsible for your free time. College is like another level of high school, but without your parents and accountability. And you have a ton of free time. You have a bunch of social outings. You got parties. You got females. You got liquor. You have it all at your beck and call. So you've got to learn to prioritize your time wisely and put goals out there for yourself. So that's probably the toughest part. But the toughest part for me was not necessarily managing my time, but learning to have more fun, especially earlier on. As I was a hermit, I didn't go out a lot. I didn't drink at all. I didn't enjoy my college years. Not that you have to enjoy college, but I was just strictly about business. I didn't quite enjoy the totality of the college life. So I would definitely say that.
What's up, guys? Just want to take a quick break and give a shout out to today's sponsor of the podcast. Like I said in the introduction, it's Ripped Nutrition, locally owned and operated hardcore supplement store here in Boise. They're off of Milwaukee. I'll put the address in the description here of the podcast. You guys can see it there. But they are amazing. I've gone there for my own stuff. They've got the exclusive Ripped series for products, but they've also got Hyped Sups, Insane Labs, Bucked Up, Innova Farm, Chaotic Labs, and a lot more. So if you guys enjoy those brands, go in there and check it out. Or if you haven't tried the Ripped series supplements that they have, go check those out too. And the best thing is, if you have questions on those, the owner will give you the information that you need. So Matt's in there. He's offering free one-on-one and group supplement consultations. So if you guys have questions on what you want to take as you're getting ready for the off season and trying to, get bigger, stronger, and faster, go check it out. Ask him, and he can help you out with it. And they've got some awesome proteins by High Tech, AstraFlav, TrueFit, and Mutant. They're just awesome. They've got everything for weight loss, muscle building, just pre-workouts, post-workouts. And the best thing is, man, they've also got some non-stims. So if you're like me and you were trying to, wean yourself off of caffeine for a little while to let your adrenals have a break, they've got non-stims too. But they've got everything on the shelves. He'll help you out. Hit up Rip Nutrition in Boise on Milwaukee. Check it out, guys. So interesting hearing everybody's different perspectives. Here's a question. Boise, Idaho. I'm a Boise State alum, born and raised in Boise. I ride the blue turf. So when my first time actually going to the shoe in Columbus was actually 2017. I finally got to go over there, and I went and watched Ohio State get torched by Baker Mayfield. But I it wasn't my first Ohio State game live, but it was my first time in the shoe. And I was kind of surprised by Columbus. I was expecting it to be a different type of a city. And it's just a little bit more industrial, at least around where the stadium was at and whatnot. I'm not sure how it was back then, but I kind of want to know, coming from your experience, military academy, kind of you grew up in Philly, but then you military academy and just different locations of life. What were your impressions of Columbus, Ohio, you got to Ohio State?
I loved it because it was in the major city. Right? I think Columbus, Ohio is what, 18th or 19th, one of the 18th or 19th largest cities in the country. It's bigger than Boston. So it was, I love the city life. I love the fact that it has so many other corporations there, Fortune 500 companies in Columbus. And I was able to enjoy, I guess, being in a real city. Fort Union Military Academy is in the middle of Virginia, and it's bucolic. It's countryside. It's everything that doesn't say fun at all. So I wanted to be around a big city with lots of people, lots of females, a lot of action, a lot of parties, but yet far enough away from home to where I can be independent. So I loved Columbus when I first got to Ohio. I did not expect Columbus to be as vibrant as it was when I got there, and I thought it would be a sleepy college town, but it's far from that.
Super interesting, man. Everyone's coming from different walks of life, different experiences, and whatnot, and so like everything just hits people in a different way. So cool, man. As you look back at your career at Ohio State, and I'm sure you've answered this question a million times over throughout your life, but do you have any memories? Like if you could take two memories, your top memories of football for the Buckeyes, what would be your top two memories that you can, ponder back on, I guess?
Wow. It would be my senior year. Not a particular game. I just really felt like I came into my own my senior year. And I would say my freshman year too. When I didn't have success, when I had success and then didn't have success. I fumbled twice against Illinois to lose the game, and I had to fight my way out of the doghouse. And the reason why I say my freshman year is because that's when I decided to grow up and become the player that I wanted to become. It wasn't easy. I had to fight through a lot of negativity, a lot of jokes, a lot of doubters, naysayers, and plant my feet and figure out a way how I was going to be successful at Ohio State. And when I decided to do that and ignore all the chatter and focus on one thing and one thing only, was to be the best running back in the country, I dedicated my life for it. And that's when I grew up and found the keys to success. And that was resilience, dedication, hard work, and the hours that are spent away from the facility, the hours that you spend on your craft when nobody's watching. I took my tickets to the games and I gave them to a ballet instructor so we can trade off. I give you my tickets for ballet lessons to become more nimble and agile and to give me again a leg up on my competition, because at my size there was nobody that was able to make people miss and also to run you over. It was just one or the other. So I wanted to be a multi-dimensional type of running back with size, speed, and tenacity. And that's what I did. So those two memories, those two times, my freshman year, certainly my senior year, when it all came to pass, it all came to fruition and came full circle for me, led me to win the Heisman Trophy.
That's so interesting. And you mentioned ballet. And we hear a lot of athletes. Like I hear a ton of athletes, macho men, whatever, you can call them what you want, but like they talk about yoga and ballet and all these different things. Did you get that advice to do that with someone like back then? Did somebody say, hey, this might be a good idea? Or did you kind of pick it up yourself? I don't know. Like, where was the background there to
my Uncle Kevin actually introduced me to ballet. He told me that Willie Gold, Herschel Walker, and Walter Payton all took ballet lessons. and you can see it in how they ran, how fluid they were, how graceful they were, how in control of their bodies that they were in the middle of traffic. And I was like, man, you know what? If it didn't help them, then I should do it, and it did. And I felt like it helped. It helped with my footwork. It helped with balance. It helped with tracking your eyes, getting your head around, and finding a spot when you spin and coming out of cuts without losing balance. I mean, all of that helped with my ability to find that empty space when it appeared like a hole was closed, to be able to cut through a jump cut and burst through that slight crack, or that slight hole, and get a gain of 15 or a big run. That was the difference. So yes, I got all that advice from my Uncle Kevin, who inspired me to really push me to take ballet lessons.
Super cool, man. Shout out to your Uncle Kevin. That's awesome, man. I think that's an interesting piece, and I appreciate you actually elaborating on that. Just like the idea of spin, and when you get out of a spin, you got to be able to lock your eyes on it and like go. Things that people really don't think about, right? Like that's part of elite running back and field vision and being able to do those little things. Like that's what makes the difference between a great running back and an elite running back. And so it's the little things, and that's cool that you were able to do that. And put your pride aside. I don't know if you necessarily had any, because I didn't know you back then, but I would imagine like some guys probably don't want to do that. Like they'd be nervous about saying,
I mean, you got to be willing to, step outside your box or eliminate the box, and you're thinking in terms of how you can get better. And there's so many different ways to skin a cat. And I was very honest about where I was, my weaknesses. And I didn't want to be a one-dimensional running back. I wanted to be a multi-dimensional back. And I knew what I had to do to get there and work on my weaknesses.
So awesome. You got to be a little bit self-aware, right? And then be
no question.
To
that's the whole key about being a great running back or a great player is self-awareness and understanding what your weaknesses are and what you're willing to do to get better.
So cool. So cool. So Eddie got ready for the professional game. I've talked to you about your transition from high school to the collegiate realm, but I want to know more like now from the collegiate realm to the professional realm and what that transition was like, because I've heard athletes talk about, well, high school to college is similar in the sense of like you're still going to school, but now the physicality of the actual sport you're playing gets higher. Now it's a business though. Going from college to the professional level it's a business. So this is all you do, but the physicality is another tier higher. So I'm curious, I always thought of you like super successful. Like you came in there, to me, it seemed like you have skip any beats, but I obviously wasn't you. So I want to know what your transition was like. What was the biggest, the hardest transition, if you will, to go from the college game to the professional?
The most challenging transition is understanding that it is a job, and that's all you do from 8 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning when you get to the facility to about 5 at night. There's no class. There's no APR. There is no Cara hours. There's none of that. It is football 24/7. That's what you study. That's what you eat. That's what you breathe. And the dangers come with money and time. Now that you got a little time on your hands when you leave the facility at 3:34, whenever you get out, is that you have the ability to, hey, spend on anything, that's going to parties, clubs, clothes, jewelry, cars, whatever that is, restaurants. And that's where you can get distracted. So again, it's understanding that you level up. And when you level up, it's a situation where you've got to prioritize your time wisely yet again. Because if you're about your business and you have aspirations of being a Hall of Famer, well, guess what? That preparation is completely different from a guy that's just trying to make the team. The guy that's making the team, he's there, working his butt off and he's doing what he has to do, and he may just go from 8 to 5 and leave. Well, the guy that wants to be a Hall of Famer, he's from 8 to about 9:30 at night, working on his body, working on his diet, studying film. endless hours at home, doing extra reps, footwork, whatever that is. That's all you do. That's all you breathe. And then in the off season, you'll find time to have fun and enjoy the fruits of your labor, if you're blessed enough to see that. So that's the biggest difference: is who is going to prepare like a professional, and who is just trying to get by, who is just trying to just get a paycheck or just be, average. And that's, for some guys, that's okay. They don't have aspirations of wanting to be one of the greatest in the game. But if you do, then it's completely different in terms of your preparation, your focus, and your effort.
I can imagine it's tough for someone like yourself, coming out of a prestigious university, having a solid college career, going in there. And then there's probably people not everyone always buys into the same thing because everybody has a different agenda. That makes certain organizations in the NFL different. They stand out over some of them. They're like, some of them really want to win, and some of them are okay to bring revenue. And that's what they're about. So it just seems like some people might have their own agendas. I'm sure it's kind of a tough transition, but one of the questions I had for you is, a couple years ago, probably about a decade ago now, ESPN went out with for 30 documentary called Broke, and they were talking about athletes lose their money, like they get introduced to all this money, and then they lose their money. And I used to be like this guy that was like, how in the heck could you lose your money after making X amount of dollars, millions and millions, da, da, da. But then as I've interviewed athletes over the course of the last 6 years on this show and been able to actually understand more, and just hearing stories, I'm like, I became more empathetic, and it started to really teach me the importance of your influences around you, especially at the professional level. So I kind of wanted to get your advice, Eddie, as you mentioned some of the things just coming in and having to prepare and be a professional. How were you able to find the right influence and make sure that your sphere of people be in your best interest, include your agents, and that might include whoever else, because there's some people that have ulterior motives, it sounds like, at that level. And I just want to know if you had any advice and what you did personally.
No, you said it beautifully, and that's what it's about. It's surrounding yourself with the right people, the right agent, the right group of friends that have like mind like you have, that are not going to look to take advantage of you or to leech off of you. The right financial advisor, the right team in general around you. And that's tough to figure out and vet out, especially if you don't have an example that can demonstrate that. So it's this life that you live, the NFL life, is predicated. Your success of it is predicated on how well you can eliminate the distractions around you and the people around you. I know firsthand, for me, I almost got $3 million stolen away from me my rookie year based off of a shady financial advisor. And it was my agent who pointed him out. Didn't wind up going with him, but he swindled a group of individuals out of millions of dollars in a Ponzi scheme. And, right off the bat, I'm introduced to that as a rookie. So you don't trust a lot of people. So it takes a level of trust. It takes for athletes to be aware of the business. And that's one thing that I aim to do at Tennessee State, is to teach these young men about the business of professional sports. Who are the players involved? What are their roles? What should their roles be? So you're not walking into a situation thinking that you work for the agent. No, the agent works for you. The financial advisor works for you. The business manager works for you. You know who your GM is. You understand the role of the NFLPA and the CPA. You didn't sign, CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. You didn't sign a power of attorney over to anyone. If anything, you do a limited power of attorney with your CPA to do bill pay. So it's understanding the nuances and details of how everybody operates and how you need to sit on top of the food chain and giving directives saying, hey, I'm going to put my money in this account here. I'm the only one that signs off on it. I sign checks out of this account over to my bill pay or to my CPA for tax purposes. Not your financial advisor and agent are linked where it's under one house and they're giving you. So you've got to set it up, and you've got to understand that you've got to have somebody around you who's savvy enough, who's been through it, and that can help you build a situation that's going to be successful for yourself.
Super interesting, and I'm glad you shared that. I think that's just it's the intriguing parts of the game that nobody really talks about much until it's set up. But it's cool that the athletes that you're around now, you have the opportunity to influence, are getting that. It's a bummer that not all of those athletes are getting, like, across the country, are getting to learn that. The ones that you have a direct influence on can learn it, and they'll understand. And hopefully more and more will become more educated as time goes on. But I think we need more people like yourself to be able to educate people, especially if they're going to be playing at that. Right. A lot of money, a lot of influence, a lot of drama comes along with that, I'm sure.
Yes, it does. Unfortunately.
Yeah, they got to know how to utilize. So, as I look back at your professional career, Eddie, I was still young when things were going down, but one thing that sticks out to mind, and always has, is the Super Bowl. And I was rooting for you guys because I was a George fan, and I think because I'm a Cowboys fan, but obviously Dallas was in the Super Bowl. And that was the infamous, yard short game. Everyone talks about, like, how close it was. Like, you guys were fighting hard. I was in 6th grade at the time. But I remember conversations being had about you specifically and just, like, your reaction and stuff, which was actually not that bad of one. It was just like I felt bad. You went on to play many years. Like, you kept playing, you kept fighting even after that. And I want to talk about adversity, because not many people get to play at that high of a level, at the highest point, the biggest game of the highest level of your sport. You get to play, but you came up just a tad short. And I want to know, the reality of that, how you faced that adversity in the sport and were able to get back to work and continue to compete after having such a close opportunity.
Well, I left that game, the Super Bowl, inspired. Although we lost, I felt like we gave it our best shot. We gave ourselves the best chance to win. Steve McNair was phenomenal. I played hard. Everybody played hard. They played for each other. So I left inspired by that and was ready to start the season the next day. I told Jeff Fisher, hey, you know what? I'm not going to the Pro Bowl. I'm going to opt out. I want to get ready for next year. I'm going to take about 3 days off, and I'm going to start preparing and getting ready for the best season of my life. He says, nah, man, go and enjoy the Pro Bowl. You never know when you'll ever be back. That's quite an accomplishment around your peers, for your family, and so forth. Long story short, I go and I have a good time, but immediately when I get back off that plane from Hawaii, I'm back on the hill again. I'm back working. I'm stretching. I'm focusing on what it's going to take for us to get back to that moment, because to finish that close, to have an opportunity to continue the game, to possibly win the game, left a lasting impression on me. And I felt like that I was built and I was born to play on that type of stage every single year. And I've never reached that point again in my career. So you've got to take advantage of it while it's there. But what I've learned is that even in life, although I finished a yard short, I still have that ambition. I still have that same spirit to cross the goal line in life and business and relationships. And this opportunity now as a head coach to cross that goal line with student athletes becoming better students, better men, better players, and going on to have successful and significant careers. So that's how I've been able to turn that experience into a positive one.
That is what I hope people will listen to right here and go back and listen to, like, over and over again, because adversity, we always say it sounds cliche. Oh, you'll go through adversity in sports. There's ups and stuff. But I mean, I think about it myself. Like, I always tell people, Eddie, like, I literally haven't witnessed a Super Bowl from the Cowboys since it was in 1995, 96. That was the year. So, like, I'm telling them, like, I would rather make the Super Bowl, because if we make it and lose when I'm this old and I'm that invested into it, I might not be able to have, like, I might have to take a week off of work about how I'd be. See, like this is the thing.
Since 1996 too, since they won it too, or 95.
Well, it was the 95, 96 season. Yeah, like that's crazy to me. It's kind of funny because that was like the same time frame of when I started, rooting for you and Ohio State. But to me, it's just like the adversity of losing at that level. It's hard to come back from. Right. I can imagine. But you've been able to do it. You used it as motivation and fuel, and I think that's super, super inspiring. If you could go back throughout your entire career up until the coaching side of things, but just as a player, who was your favorite teammate? I'm sure there's of them, but who's the most influential teammate and why?
I would say Steve McNair, because he didn't talk a whole lot, but when he did speak, it spoke volumes. It resonated. It landed within us as players, as teammates. I've watched him, go from a player not having a great deal of confidence early in his career to becoming a co-MVP type of player. He's been through a lot as an African-American quarterback in this league, especially back then. It was still kind of, he was questioned on his ability to learn, to get all that stuff. And I think that really bothered Steve, but to watch him persevere and be diligent through that time definitely made him stronger. It made him into the superstar quarterback that we've known him to be. So, definitely Steve McNair is a teammate that has had the most impact on my life.
Just Steve McNair. Quite a story, and that's cool to hear his name again for any sports fan out there. That's awesome. And if you could go back in your playing days, switching focus here to your competitors, is there a competitor that stood out to you, whether they were on the defensive side of the ball or maybe you looked up to them on the offensive side of the ball just for a different team? Who would it be and why? Like some that you faced that you're like, man, that was a tough one.
Of course, playing against the Baltimore Ravens and that defense with Ray Lewis was always a battle. It's always teaching you something about yourself, digging a little bit deeper. But I had tremendous respect for guys like Jerry Rice, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, Junior Seau, the late Reggie White. Those guys really paved the way and set such a high standard of what it meant to be a professional and an elite professional at the highest level. And it was these dudes would cut your throat off. They'll cut your head off. They had a great sense of humility and the professionalism and grace, and that's something that I've always aspired to be. But I've tried to, on numerous occasions, just to sit down, get to know what makes them tick. Much like this podcast, get a pen and pad out and just listen. To what kind of advice they could give me for me to be the best that I could be, and also, the best person I could possibly be off the football field as well.
Oh, cool, man. So freaking cool. As you've transitioned into the coaching world, Eddie, I've always told people this. I've obviously never played at a level like you've played at, but basketball player and a boxer, like competed through high school and whatnot, and then changing over to the coaching world now in my 30s. It's a different skill set. Not all the best employees, best managers, and it's not always the best players always make the best coaches, but there are a select few that can. They can make that transition to a different skill set. I want to know from a perspective at the college football level, knowing what you know, like what's the hardest part about coaching? Is it that you can be like as hands-on? Do you sometimes see something you're being an idiot? Like, I know the route you're going down, you need to listen to me, like, or do you find it just super, super fulfilling and loving that they respect everything that you're saying? Like, I'm curious on your side of things, like if it's a hard transition there.
It is, because you never know if you're having a true impact on them in this moment. Sometimes you want them to get it so bad, but it's going to take time. It's going to take repetition. It's going to take for them to fail, to try again and fail, and to see if they're going to persevere through it. The toughest part is just that, is getting guys to buy in holistically, not just within the team, but within your staff. I mean, just the entire building, from academics to athletic training to um, uh, our sports performance, deal, to nutrition, to everything, every department that touches compliance, every department that touches football is trying to make sure that everybody is on the same page and that we're all pushing the boat in the same direction without any ulterior motives or not true buy-in. That's the number one thing, is who is bought in from all aspects of the program. Because if one person is not in alliance or incongruent with you or in harmony with what you believe in and your vision, then it's not going to work. You're going to get pushback. You're going to get oversight from some place where, oh, you know what, we'll let this slide. Well, if you're preaching, discipline and little things in one particular area, and let's say in sports performance and in academics, you let certain things slide, then these kids are not having that sense of accountability. So you have to make sure that that's streamlined throughout every single department, and it's preached, teached every day, and is reinforced to the point you have to really coach your coaches. You have to coach the other executives that are touching football, because that's where an elite program comes in, and it's exhausting. It can be time consuming. It's a battle of wills, a battle of the spirit of of battling rebellion and raising the standard of individuals in that building to what you want it to be. So that's the most challenging part. The X's and O's part, that's easy. Getting out there and having them run inside, outside zone, pin pull, whatever scheme that you dial up, that stuff is what you look forward to. Finding the right people in the building, in terms of that part. But to hammer home every day and to check everybody, who has the slightest bit of mediocrity, you've got to do it consistently, or else it could possibly fester and destroy the program from the inside out.
So much that goes into it that like the general public doesn't know. That is crazy.
Oh, no question. Right.
That's tough. So the last part of the interview, just a couple rapid fire questions. I call it the Guru's Gauntlet. This is what I do.
The
So I'll
Guru's
ask you
Gauntlet.
questions. Guru's Gauntlet. So we'll just ask you a few questions to wrap it up here, Eddie. I just want to first thank you for your time, as you've already taken enough time to go around and everything, and I know you're busy. So we'll rapid fire a few of them. Name, image, and likeness. Topic of patient nowadays, because it's loud. Everything athletes can profit off of their name, image, and likeness. And you being a coach, you just mentioned some of the hardships that I wouldn't call them hardships, but they're just some obstacles you got to tackle within the program and whatnot yourself, as well as the X's and O's. And then you yourself were an athlete, a very high profile athlete at that, especially at the college level. So things have changed quite a bit. Do you think, with all your experience so far, both as a player and a coach and everything, that name, image, and likeness, this whole thing is good or bad for college athletics?
It is good. The intention is good, because the intention behind college football in the beginning, when it first began, was not for it to be as big as it is. It was recreational. It was for our men and women that served our country. They were playing the sport at the collegiate level. And then as time grew on, it became popular and more popular. And with popularity and more eyeballs comes money, comes TV deals, comes a name, image, and likeness, and all of that. So it's evolved from the time that I played, certainly in the 90s, to the BCS era, and now at the college football playoff level. And it's going to extend beyond that. So it's a multi-billion-dollar business. College coaches, at one point, it wasn't disclosed what they were making. They were probably making, maybe $500,000 during the time of Joe Pa and Earl Bruce and Bo Schembechler. Well, now college coaches are making, 3 times, 4 times is that, whereas we're looking at, or even 9 times, $9 million contracts, head coaches, offensive coordinators getting paid $4 million, $5 million. So depending on what level you're on, it's grown to that. So within that, you can't sit up here and have antiquated policies and expectations around a business model that has evolved and has grown. And to say that, your education will equals the value of your name, image, and likeness, which is not completely true, because some of these coaches are pushing for players to take classes that isn't leading them to a particular end goal in mind, with a degree that's going to be meaningful at the end of your career. And then when you graduate, what do you have? If you don't go to the NFL. So yes, I've always been a proponent of athletes being compensated for their name, image, and likeness. Yes, I think there needs to be parameters that are wrapped around that. What that is, I'm not sure. I don't know what that looks like. But players should be able to take their name, especially if you're successful and you've won various awards. If you're a Heisman Trophy winner and you're going back for another year, you should be able to sign autographs for more money on top of what you're getting on your scholarship, through your scholarship as well. And I get the whole Title IX deal. I get that you want everybody to have a fair shake, but that's the reality is this. Um, there are 2 sports that pays the bills at these universities, and it's football and basketball, mainly football. The football program is the eyes and ears of any institution, and is the doorstep to any institution, and it's the number one revenue generator, if you're doing it right, to any institution. So with that being said, there'll be more money, more eyeballs, more resources for that program, because that's the cash cow. And then you allow those athletes to make that money on winning awards, on being All-Americans. And I think it filters over into women's sports, where if you have a softball team, a women's basketball team, a gymnastics team that's national champions, those young ladies should have the opportunity to make the money on their name, image, and likeness. There's enough out there for everyone to eat. There's enough out there for everyone to take advantage of this. And it allows student athletes to apply their knowledge in terms of financial literacy and understanding that, hey, you know what? If I get paid $1 million, I can't go spend that whole million because I have taxes to pay. I got to pay Uncle Sam. And guess what? You're going to be taxed at the highest tax bracket. Oh, really? Yes. So you have to set up an LLC. You have to have an agent. You have to have a CPA. You have to have somebody that understands that, at the end of the quarter or the next year, you have to file for taxes and to save, put money away. So there's an opportunity to establish habits early on, and teaching student athletes about financial literacy and setting things up properly. Because if you're blessed enough to play at the next level, at the NFL level, you want to probably the goal is to make more money off the field than you do on the field. And that's your name, image, and likeness. And it extends beyond your playing days. So I love it. I just think that there needs to be more education around it. I think more kids need to be set up for success versus be thrown at the wolves and allowing whatever agents to capitalize on any deals that these kids come across.
Definitely. That is one of the most in-depth responses I've received in regard, and I agree with every single thing you said. And I think there's opportunity there for people to educate these athletes. It's great, but I love the idea of literacy. That word right there, and everything you explained afterward is what I have always kind of like wanted to say, but I just didn't really know how to say it. It's like, yeah, but you understand that it can teach them a lot of lessons like early on. They don't run into problems later, but they're gonna have to learn taxes. They're gonna have to learn that. Super important. Now, we talked right before we started recording. I asked you a question. You had the bookshelf behind you. You got tons of books. Talked about podcasts on here. You mentioned some podcasts earlier on, just podcasts that you've listened to and whatnot. I just want to ask you a book or a podcast that you would recommend and people listen to this podcast right now. Like, what's a book or podcast that stands out to you, read or listened to, and why?
A book that I'm currently reading now is the obstacle is the way. and it just talks about if there is an obstacle in your way of, let's say, in your career, and that is blocking you from success, instead of stopping at an obstacle and analyzing the obstacle and being fearful of it or trying to go around it, to get to the other side, to get what you want, ultimately, you have to go through that obstacle to achieve your goal. And to find the blessing in what the so-called challenges or curses that may come along your way. What appears to be a loss or a setback is really a pathway to your successes. And that's an excellent read. There's one by John Gordon of the Energy Bus. I'm pretty sure you're probably familiar with that one.
Heard it. Read it.
There is a podcast that I'm listening to. I listen to John Maxwell's podcast on leadership. I love his stuff. Masterclass. If you haven't got this app, it's a masterclass. You can sign up for it. I think is like, I don't know what the price point is, but you're able to get a masterclass on anything, from being an MC to being a DJ to pottery to being an artist to surfing, skateboarding. Well, there's one on there with Bill Clinton, and when he's talking about making tough decisions during his presidency. And also there's a masterclass with Coach K. And he just breaks down his philosophy in terms of how he was able to build Duke's brand and his coaching style, and how he delegates. And he's very vulnerable. He's selfless, and he doesn't have all the answers. And that's a refreshing thing to hear, is that, hey, as a head coach, I don't have to have all the answers. I can seek those answers. I open the door up for an environment where I make it inclusive, but I'm also the dictator in terms of, hey, this is where we're going. And this is how we're going to get there. But we all have to have buy-in. This is our culture, not just mine. We're going to establish a culture. I'm letting you know we're establishing a culture, but I need you to be a part of this culture so you have buy-in. And that to me is invaluable. So you never reach a place where you've arrived and you have, you're the coaches of all coaches or active all. No, you're always evolving. You're always growing. And those three things I would say that I just mentioned would be good reads to start with.
I am going to check out this masterclass app. I'm a huge fan of that. So I've never actually looked at that app. I just wrote it down.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And then
it really is.
Books, huge. Last question for you, Eddie. Biggest life lesson that football has taught you?
The biggest life lesson football has taught me is that the game is never over. Although time is not on the clock, it appears that a particular game might be over, another battle comes. And it's how you approach that battle. It's the certain mindset that you have. And what I mean by that, the game, not just the physical game, not just the game in between the white lines, the game of life is never over. If one door shuts, another one opens up. If an obstacle's in your way, guess what? That is the way. If you're down by, 15 points late in the third, fourth quarter, there's still time on the clock. I can speak to that with the Music City Miracle with 16 seconds on the clock. We had a play dialed up that I thought would never work, and we wind up, advancing on to the next round of the playoffs. So no matter how bad you're down, how far you're up, you have got to learn how to close. So those are the things that I've learned in life and that I use in everyday life, that, hey, if I wake up and I'm breathing and I have all my limbs I can see and hear, hey, I got a fighting chance today to get better, to get closer to my dreams, to get closer to my goals. So the game is never over.
Fantastic, man. I just want to say thank you. I've been this, obviously I personally have enjoyed it. Like I'm like borderline emotional, like a boy, but been an amazing opportunity. I appreciate your time, sir, and just being willing to work through the technical glitches, and then also, join me and share your knowledge with my audience. I'm looking forward to continuing to, follow you in your career and seeing what you guys do over there, and whatever life brings you. I'm a fan of yours, so I'm going to be supporting you from over here in Boise. But just want to say thanks once again for joining the show and sharing your knowledge with us, man.
Shane, thank you so much, man. I'm glad we made this happen, and hopefully this will bless a few of your listeners, man.
It absolutely will. For all those listening, the only thing I ask for you guys is to make sure to leave me a review on Apple Podcasts, and we'll be coming to you next week with another interview. Take care. Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.